I suddenly sat up from the icy double bed, a dense sweat beading on my forehead. It was pouring outside, lightning flashing the bedroom's silhouette bright and dim. I raised my hand and looked at these pale, flawless hands of mine, my heart pounding fiercely inside my chest. I was reborn. In the previous life, I died in a cold basement, my bones broken, my assets bled dry, and the culprit behind all of it was Ethan, the boyfriend I had been with for 5 years and had supported with everything I had, and his seemingly innocent yet scheming first love, Chloe. They used my family's inheritance and patents to exchange for the capital of their peak reunion, and eventually, to erase any lingering risks, they personally sent me to hell. But now, as I looked at the numbers flashing on the electronic clock, I knew heaven had played the fairest joke on me, the crucial night I had returned to. At this moment, Ethan, under the pretense of staying late at the office, was driving the sports car I bought for him across half the city to buy Chloe her favorite late-night dessert for her fever, while also arranging the most top-tier apartment in the city center for this frail and helpless first love. He thinks I'm still the obedient, gentle girlfriend who waited at home for him to come back, who would cater to him in every way. He has no idea that I'm not going to perform this play with him any longer. I rolled off the bed, barefoot, and walked into the study. Without hesitation, I opened the safe, took out 2 thick ledgers of assets and the original exclusive patent authorization documents inherited by my family. Over the years, to help Ethan start his business, I had deposited most of the funds into our nominal joint account, and even granted his company royalty-free rights to use the family patents. But legally, the core ownership of those patents had always been firmly in my hands alone. I opened the computer, plugged in a triple encrypted USB drive, and logged into a private terminal of a Swiss offshore bank. My fingers danced across the keyboard. In the past life, out of trust, I had granted Ethan additional signatory rights on the joint account and had even prepared to sign a transfer of equity with him next month. But now, I only needed to move my fingers. Step 1. Revoke all signing and withdrawal rights Ethan held on the joint account. Step 2. Initiate emergency fund transfers based on the family trust terms I had set up in advance. As the green progress bar on the screen rapidly advanced, the $450 million of liquid funds in the joint account were thoroughly emptied in just 3 minutes, transferred in batches to an absolutely secure offshore private trust fund. Next, I opened the company's legal affairs system backend. As the 60% majority shareholder and the sole owner of the core patents, I had the right to terminate authorization at any time. I indiscriminately pressed my electronic signature and generated a legally binding patent authorization termination and breach remedy notice. Once this document takes effect, Ethan's company, currently developing a core project it claims is worth hundreds of millions, will instantly become illegal infringement paperwork. After finishing all of this, I watched Ethan's bank card status change from normal to restricted/frozen on the screen, the corner of my mouth lifting into a cold arc. At this moment, my phone screen suddenly lit up, and a message popped up from Ethan. "Baby, there's a sudden meeting at the company tonight, I may be very late. You sleep first, don't wait for me, love you." Reading these words, I let out a cold laugh. He's probably now softly feeding Chloe porridge, taking my money, and playing the role of a benevolent, righteous savior. I didn't reply to this text. Instead, I directly dialed the head of the family's legal team, a formal, businesslike call, inform everyone to act immediately according to the contingency plan. By midnight tonight, I want all legal agreements related to me under Ethan's name to be completely settled. The clock on the wall points to 11:01 p.m. A heavy rain pummels the floor-to-ceiling windows, producing a dull, crackling racket. I stand in front of the enormous glass pane, pour myself a glass of ice water, and swallow it in one go. The cold liquid slides down my throat into my stomach, instantly cooling the nerves that have been jolting with anger and rebirth. 5 minutes ago, I had already completed all the fund transfers. But this is only the beginning. The net of revenge has just unfurled, and I will not give Ethan any chance to catch his breath or turn the tables. In the last life, Ethan relied on the startup capital supplied by my family and this top-floor luxury villa in the city center worth tens of millions to cultivate a young, successful, deeply wealthy founder image in the social circle. and Chloe played the role of his white moonlight, meticulously protected by him, wearing limited edition clothes I bought, donning custom haute couture jewelry I had made, secretly sneering at me at various socialite gatherings as nothing more than a free ATM whose assets had been drained. They enjoyed everything I gave them, and after squeezing out my last ounce of value, they pushed me into a bottomless hell. This life, I will make them spit out every penny, every item they've swallowed, bone and all. I turn and walk into the master bedroom's walk-in closet. Here are all the luxury goods, jewelry, and art I have accumulated over the years, as well as the various watches and tailored suits Ethan bought with my extra card. I pull open the drawer, take out the encrypted tablet I carry with me, and dial the numbers of the city's largest professional asset liquidation company and the top-tier moving team. I am Victoria. My voice remains utterly emotionless. As per the highest specification contract we set previously, bring people over immediately. Remember to bring your best lifting equipment and engineering dismantling team. Arrive within 30 minutes. The person in charge on the other end spoke with almost obsequious courtesy. No problem, Victoria. Our 5 heavy enclosed trucks and 30 professionals are already waiting outside your community, ready to enter at any moment. After hanging up, I walk to the corridor's control panel and use my fingerprint to unlock the house control system hidden behind the wall sculpture. This house was purchased in full with funds from my family trust, and the property deed has always listed only me, Victoria, as the owner. Over the years, to safeguard Ethan's fragile, sensitive pride, I've publicly claimed that this is our shared love nest, even insisting that every decorative material in the house, every crystal chandelier imported from Italy, was personally selected and purchased by me in Milan. Tonight, I will restore it to its original state, a lifeless, bare shell. About 20 minutes later, a steady, regular knock comes from outside the door. I open it, and the liquidation company's manager enters with a disciplined moving team in uniform, filing in one after another. They carry professional scanners, packing boxes, and a variety of dismantling tools. Victoria, the manager, respectfully hands me a thick electronic ledger. Please confirm the liquidation list. I don't even glance at it and sign my name on it directly. Except for load-bearing walls and fixed plumbing, everything in the rooms that I bought, furniture, appliances, carpets, curtains, artwork, the liquor in the wine cabinet, and even the custom wall lamps in the corridor, move them all out. Ethan's personal items, such as the luxury suits and watches purchased with my funds, should be sealed as collateral for debt and held on-site for auction under your legal team's supervision. Understood. We will clear everything within 2 hours and leave no trace, the manager said, waving his hand. Dozens of professionals immediately split up and began to work in an organized, clear manner. For a moment, a skilled and efficient disassembly sounded throughout the luxurious villa. The genuine leather sofa was packed and sealed, the imported sound system worth millions was hoisted as a whole, and even the famous paintings on the wall and crystal ornaments in the glass cabinet were swept clean in just 30 minutes. I pulled up a folding chair and sat in the center of the empty, sparsely furnished living room, holding a freshly printed copy of the residential lease termination and resale contract. The real estate agency representative was waiting nearby. Ms. Victoria, the buyer has confirmed the intention to pay in full. As long as you sign, this property will be transferred instantly at 10% below market price. The buyer promises to arrange a construction crew first thing tomorrow morning for a complete structural reorganization, the agent said respectfully. Very well. I did not hesitate to sign my English name on the sales contract and handed over the property title and keys to the other party. Watching the originally warm and luxurious duplex being stripped down to cold mud brick walls in just over an hour, I felt an unprecedented calm and pleasure inside me. Just then, my phone vibrated again. The screen showed an incoming call from Ethan. I raised an eyebrow, pressed answer, and brought the phone to my ear, but spoke first to nothing. On the other end, Ethan's voice came through, slightly tired yet sly and nonchalant. Victoria, you're not asleep yet, are you? I've just dealt with the company matters. Chloe and I ran into each other on the road. She's in a bad mood tonight and not emotionally stable. I'm not sure about her staying alone in a hotel. I'm taking her back to our home's guest room to stay for the night. Please prepare a clean silk sleeping robe for her and simmer a hot bowl of soup. We'll be home in about 20 minutes. His tone was natural, with an air of superiority. In his eyes, I was forever the thoughtful girl who would endure for the sake of this relationship and even tolerate caring for his first love. He didn't even give me a chance to refuse. After finishing this, he hung up. Hearing the busy dial tone from the phone, I couldn't help but smile softly. Returning with his first love to our former marital home? Asking me, his official girlfriend, to prepare sleepwear and hot soup for her? Ethan, you truly take shamelessness and selfishness to the extreme. But it's okay. In 20 minutes, I hope what you bring to Chloe isn't warmth in a guest room, but an unforgettable nightmare for a lifetime. I stood up, brushed the non-existent dust from my clothes. By now, the moving team had completed the final tidying, and the vast villa was empty, even the taps turned off, power cut, with only the scent of cement and cold walls in the air. I turned and coldly instructed the property manager, from now on, revoke all resident access rights for Ethan and permanently remove his license plate from the community Bluetooth system. If he forces entry, call the police immediately and treat it as illegal intrusion into a residence. Yes, Ms. Victoria, we will act entirely according to your instructions. The property manager nodded solemnly. I left the keys on the foyer floor, not looking back, and took the dedicated elevator down to the underground parking lot. In a corner of the parking lot stood a snow-white limited edition Pagani race car. This was the gift my father gave me on my 22nd birthday, and the ownership entirely belonged to me. In the past, to protect Ethan's pride, I mostly drove a low-key sedan and kept this car locked in the garage for a long time. Today, it would carry me away and completely depart from this foul, unbearable past. I pulled open the car door, sat in the snug, enveloping race car seat, inserted the key, and slammed my foot down on the accelerator. Vroom! Accompanied by the beast-like roar of the V12 engine, the intense boost of speed instantly enveloped me. The white beast tore through the dim underground garage and, down the slope, shot into the rain-soaked night. As I passed the gate of the community, my rearview mirror flashed with a familiar black BMW sedan. That was the car Ethan was driving. The two cars brushed past each other on the rainy street. He was eager to rush back to what he thought was a warm, luxurious home, to show his success and generosity to his first love. And I, meanwhile, drove my own supercar, braving the raging wind and rain, leaving the dust far behind. The downpour tore into a motley display of blurred lights in the rearview mirror, and I floored the accelerator. The snow-white Pagani slices through the night like a bolt of lightning. I parked the car in the parking garage of the Presidential Suite at a top hotel in the city center, standing in front of the towering floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the rain-soaked city below. I hold a stemmed glass in my hand, red wine tracing a seductive rim along the inside of the glass. I check my watch, it's 12:14 in the deep night. At this time, Ethan should have already led his fragile and helpless first love Chloe, happily pushing open the door to the villa he once believed to be warm and luxurious. The truth is as I predicted. At this very moment, in front of Building 01, the top-tier block of Emerald Bay Villa, a black BMW slowly stops at the garage entrance. Ethan unbuckles his seatbelt, turns his head to Chloe in the passenger seat with an incredibly gentle and possessive smile. "Chloe, don't worry, once we're here it'll feel like you're home." Victoria is a bit stubborn, but as long as I speak, she won't dare mistreat you. "Tonight you'll stay here. I've already asked her to prepare the most comfortable silk pajamas and hot soup for you." Chloe shrugs, her eyes red, putting on a pitiable frail look, in a soft, coquettish voice. "Ethan, wouldn't this bother Victoria too much? After all, we haven't seen each other in so many years. What if she misunderstands us? I'm just homeless, I don't want to trouble you." "Idiot, what are you saying?" Ethan affectionately nuzzles Chloe's nose, his eyes full of blind confidence. "This house, my current position, I earned them with my own ability. In this family, I'm in charge. She's just a woman dependent on me." Come, I'll take you inside to see our lobby, that crystal chandelier imported from Milan, it perfectly suits your temperament. Ethan pulls out the keys and the owner's access card, leading Chloe toward the door with swagger. However, when he placed the access card against the door, the usual crisp unlocking sound did not ring out. Instead, a red alarm light flashed, and a cold mechanical female voice spoke from the machine. Sorry, your access privileges have been cancelled. Denied entry. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, and he forced a stiff laugh. The property management system must have short-circuited from tonight's rain. What a bunch of waste. To avoid embarrassment in front of Chloe, he quickly pulled out a physical key and inserted it into the lock. With a click, the door opened. Ethan wore a smug smile, and he pushed the door wide, turning to make a courteous gesture. Welcome to, his words cut off abruptly. Inside the door, the air did not carry the expected warm lavender scent or the warm yellow glow of gentle lighting. Instead, a cold, damp stench, mixed with cement and paint fumes, stung the nostrils. Ethan instinctively raised his hand to switch on the wall light. Click, click, click. After pressing a few times, the entire house remained dead in pitch-black silence. What's going on? Power out? Ethan furrowed his brows, his expression barely holding. He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and cast a beam toward the living room. When that bright light swept across the vast living room, both Ethan and Chloe were struck by lightning. They froze in place. Before their eyes, a desolate scene stretched out. The carpet originally laid with top-tier imported marble has disappeared, leaving only rough, bare concrete floors. The multi-million-dollar Italian genuine leather sofa, custom coffee table, and embedded private cinema system, all of them vanished without a trace. Even the famous oil paintings hanging on the walls and the expensive crystal chandeliers on the ceiling were dismantled by professionals, leaving only a few bare holes with expansion bolts and exposed wires in the air. The entire top luxury duplex villa, covering thousands of square meters, has at this moment been reduced to a hollow, emptier than a roughhouse ruin made of cement. What's going on? A thief. A thief. A burglar. Ethan panicked completely, his eyes nearly bulging out. He crazily rushed into the master bedroom, the study, and the wardrobe room, the light from his phone fluttering wildly as he ran. In the wardrobe room, all his expensive custom suits, limited edition watches, and high-end shoes were gone without a trace. In the study, his office computer, the collection of top-tier wines, even the desk and chairs were moved so thoroughly there was not a scrap left. Victoria! Victoria, where did you go? Ethan screamed hysterically, the echo bouncing back and forth through the empty, dead-silent cement house, making it look especially eerie and terrifying. Chloe, frightened by the sight of the destruction, turned pale and walked in wearing high heels, stepping on the fine cement dust, screaming, Ethan! What exactly is going on? Didn't you say this was your luxury villa? Why is there nothing here? Not even a place to sit. Ethan trembled all over, gasping for breath, his eyes red, roaring, impossible. Absolutely impossible. Victoria, that B***TCH, has hidden the stuff. He shivered, frantically dialing my number. He hung up. Dialed again. Hung up again. After dialing 7 or 8 times in a row, the call was finally answered. Ethan didn't even wait for me to speak and roared into the phone, Victoria! What the hell are you doing, you crazy woman? Where's the stuff in the house? Where's the sofa? The lights? My suits and watches? You've ruined the house. Where am I supposed to live with Chloe? Come back immediately and restore the things. Do you hear me? On this end, I was sitting in a 5-star hotel on a comfortable cashmere sofa, listening to the frantic roar from the phone, the corner of my mouth curling up more and more in ease, elegance, and coldness. I gently swayed the wineglass in my hand and spoke with an unmatched calm, elegant yet icy, Ethan, a brain is a good thing, but unfortunately you don't have one. What do you mean? Ethan roared. First, that house, its ownership has always been mine personally. An hour ago I signed the house sale contract and paid in full. The buyer will bring in demolition teams tomorrow morning to knock down walls. If you don't leave now, you may be buried under bricks tomorrow. Second, all the furniture, artworks, and lighting in the house were purchased with my money. I am taking back what belongs to me, that's a rightful disposition. As for your suits and watches, I paused, gave a faint smile, they are collateral for debts you have illegally occupied over the past years. My legal team has already arrived to auction them off to settle the debt. Ethan felt as if a blow had struck his head, his mind roaring, You're selling the house? What right do you have? We were together for 5 years. This was our marital home. Marital home? You don't deserve it, I cut him off with a cold sneer. Third, and most importantly. Ethan, please check your email. Just as I began to speak, Ethan's phone vibrated, receiving an email from one of the world's leading law firms. Ethan's fingers trembled as he opened the email, and when he saw the lines of bold red text in the header, a chill ran through him and his blood seemed to freeze in an instant. Notice of termination of all patent technology licensing. Joint account funds freeze and demand for recovery lawyer's letter. Declaration of complete termination of cohabitation and legal relationship. Each word, every sentence, felt like a cold blade precisely piercing his vital point. Victoria. You froze the joint account? You withdrew the patent license? Ethan's voice began to tremble violently, filled with disbelief, fear, and despair. Do you know what you're doing? The company is about to sign with the largest investor next week. Without patents and funds, my company will go bankrupt. You'll ruin me. What I ruin is you. I replied lightly, Ethan, enjoy your last moments tonight. Without me, you'll be nothing but trash. After speaking, I hung up the call and added his number to the permanent blacklist. In the rough and tumble apartment on Jade Bay, thunder roared outside, and lightning illuminated Ethan's pale, paper-thin, grotesquely twisted face. Chloe looked at the dead gray Ethan, stepped forward, and grabbed his arm, shouting shrilly, Ethan. Say something. Is everything she said true? You really have no money? This house isn't yours. Is your company going bankrupt? Ethan looked at the empty, colossal ruin, listening to the rain beating against the window, and the whole person collapsed to his knees, his eyes filled with endless fear and despair. Heavy rain had poured for 3 days, and the entire city was shrouded in a gloomy mist. During these 3 days, Ethan's world had completely collapsed. He went insane trying to contact me through every channel, trying to block me at my company and at my parents' villa, but I had already arranged to have the world's top security detail and legal isolation barrier to isolate me from him, so he couldn't touch even a corner of my clothes. Yet, for Ethan, the real disaster was only beginning. Today was the evening of the city's top-tier business elites banquet. It was hosted by St. Clair Group, the largest venture capital giant in the city, gathering the city's top influencers, business magnates, and tech's new stars. In the last life, Ethan attended this banquet, holding the exclusive technology patent and business plan I carefully prepared for him, successfully wooing the chairman of St. Clair Group, and secured tens of millions of dollars in series of funding, catapulting him into the industry's hot startup prodigy. This life. He still longs to seize this perfect chance to turn the tide. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the St. Clair 5-star hotel's grand banquet hall was radiant with gold and crimson. Fragrance and shadows swirled, and jazz melodies flowed gracefully through the air. Ethan wore an old suit borrowed from who knows where, his face wearing a stiff and feverish smile, while pushing a Chloe in a cheap little dress, dressed to the nines but looking out of place, through the crowd, striking up conversations with investors here and there. President Chen, the AI core algorithms our company developed are absolutely unique in the market right now. If your company invests $20 million, I guarantee an IPO next year with at least 5-fold return. Ethan held a middle-aged investor's hand tightly, his tone anxious to the point of near self-abasement. President Chen withdrew his hand with mild disgust, casting a cold glance at him. Ethan, I hear that at tomorrow's patent approval meeting, there seems to be some dispute over your core technology rights? The industry is saying that the true owner of that algorithm isn't you, but Ms. Victoria. Ethan's face instantly turned ugly, a thin layer of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead as he forced a calm, evasive defense. That's all rumors. Victoria is just my ex-girlfriend. Those technologies were developed by me and my team personally, she's merely a figurehead. Besides, our dispute will be resolved soon. Standing nearby, Chloe hurried over, forcing a coquettish smile and chiming in, yes, President Chin, Ethan is the real genius. That Victoria is just a blood-sucking opportunist who relies on a little family money to claim credit. You mustn't believe the rumors outside. President Chin looked at Chloe as if seeing a fool, didn't bother replying, and turned to leave. Chloe! Shut up. It's not your place to speak here. Ethan lowered his voice, glowering at Chloe with a fierce look that flashed with unmistakable contempt. Without my funding and refined taste, Chloe's petty theatrics to evoke pity in a small circle looked incredibly ridiculous and vulgar among the moguls gathered at the business banquet. Just as Ethan found himself in an awkward, desperate bind, the banquet hall doors suddenly opened slowly by 2 rows of well-trained black-clad bodyguards. The once noisy hall instantly quieted, and everyone's eyes naturally shifted toward the entrance. I'm wearing a midnight sky-black diamond long dress tailor-made by a top French haute couture designer, and a priceless De Beers ruby necklace graces my neck. I hold the arm of the chairman of the St. Clair Group as I walk gracefully into the venue. Behind me, 4 top global legal team lawyers with briefcases, their expressions stern. My aura is radiant and dazzling. Oh my goodness! It's Victoria! She actually came in with the chairman of St. Clair. I heard the St. Clair Group's latest $5 billion tech industry fund, its chief advisor and largest limited partner, is Victoria. Tonight she's stunning, like a queen descended to earth. The surrounding exclamations and compliments strike Ethan's chest like heavy hammers. Ethan is completely dumbfounded, eyes wide, staring hard at me, who is surrounded at the core by everyone. He never expected that the woman who used to be gentle and considerate in front of him, even willing to step aside behind the scenes to cook for him, would possess such suffocating wealth and status. And Chloe, looking at the high-end gown and brilliant jewelry on me, then at her own wrinkled, cheap dress, is so jealous she nearly claws her nails into her palms. I hold up my champagne, gracefully engaging with several industry-leading business magnates. As my eyes scan Ethan, who stands awkwardly in the corner, there is no warmth at all, as if I'm looking at a worthless stone. Ethan grits his teeth, a strong sense of twisted resentment rising inside him. He pushes Chloe aside, straightens his collar, forces a signature sentimental smile, and walks straight toward me. Victoria! Ethan steps in front of me, his voice trembling slightly yet trying to stay composed. I know you're still angry with me. I was wrong that night, I shouldn't have brought Chloe home. But tonight is a serious business occasion. If there's any private matter, let's discuss it after the banquet ends, okay? He tries to use this seemingly intimate tone to hint to those around us that we still have a close relationship, hoping to leverage me to salvage his image in front of the investors. I pause, a chillingly indifferent sneer tugging at the corner of my mouth. Before I can speak, the chairman of St. Clair Group steps forward with a cold expression and asks in a low voice, "Who are you? How did you sneak into this level of a banquet?" Ethan's face turns pale, and he quickly straightens his posture and says, "Chairman, hello, I am Ethan, CEO of Aurora Tech. Our company is in talks with your group for series of financing, and Victoria is my Aurora Tech?" I interrupt him with a cool, clear, yet icy voice that resounds throughout the banquet hall. "Ethan, it seems you've got something wrong." The crowd's attention immediately shifts, and people gather into a semicircle around us. I turn, signaling the head of the in-house legal team behind me to step forward. A top-tier senior lawyer steps up, pulls out a document from his briefcase stamped with the court and patent office red seals, and declares loudly, "Esteemed business colleagues, I am the chief legal counsel to Mrs. Victoria. Here, on behalf of Mrs. Victoria, I formally issue a public statement to society. First, Mrs. Victoria has officially revoked all technical authorizations and patent rights for Aurora Tech Company. And Ethan personally 3 days ago. Aurora Tech currently claims ownership of 3 core AI algorithms. The rights to those algorithms are entirely owned by Mrs. Victoria personally. Secondly, Ms. Victoria has filed an infringement lawsuit against Aurora Tech and applied for a pre-trial injunction. From today onward, any institution that provides funding or engages in business cooperation with Aurora Tech will be named as co-defendants in the infringement suit. Thirdly, Ms. Victoria, as the largest holder of the St. Clair Technology Fund, formally vetoes all of Aurora Tech's financing applications. Wow! At the moment the reading finished, the entire banquet hall erupted in an uproar. All the investors and business partners looked at Ethan, and the gaze in their eyes shifted from skepticism to aversion and disdain. In the business world, with core technology infringement plus the largest investor cutting off funding permanently, it is equivalent to being sentenced to death. Ethan's face twitched, his blood drained completely, and he swayed as if about to collapse. Victoria. You are going to push me to my death. How can you be so cruel? Cruel? I stepped up to Ethan, looking down at him from above, and in a voice only the two of us could hear, exceedingly cold, I said, Ethan, compared to everything you did to me in my previous life, this is only the opening act. Ethan trembled all over, his eyes filled with extreme fear, unable to understand what I meant by a previous life, but he could clearly feel the overwhelming hatred and killing intent radiating from me. At that moment, several debt collectors who had been alerted and bank lawyers rushed into the banquet hall as well. Mr. Ethan, the emergency short-term loan your company applied for has overdue. Because your joint guarantor account is frozen, please come with us to the bank to handle the debt. And the materials funded by our construction team. Ethan, if you don't pay today, don't think you can walk out that door. Creditors swarmed in, surrounding Ethan and tearing at his suit lapels with wild force. Once a young CEO with dazzling prospects, now under the gaze of countless flashbulbs and top-tier socialites, he was being attacked and dragged like a clown, his hair disheveled and utterly humiliated. And Chloe, standing to the side, saw the trouble and turned pale with fright, tiptoeing to slip out through the back door, but a few reporters surrounded her, snapping photos relentlessly. The scandal at the banquet swept through the local business circle like a tsunami within just 24 hours. Ethan's Aurora Tech stock plummeted, partners cancelled orders, and calls from banks demanding debt payments nearly exploded his phone. In a bid to grab the last lifeline, Ethan made a decision that would bury him in an abyss. He attempted to secretly siphon off the remaining $300,000 of liquidity from the company's public. These funds were public funds used to pay employees and suppliers, but by then Ethan had already been cornered by creditors and Chloe's unreasonable harassment. To maintain her vain socialite persona, Chloe forced Ethan to help her repay personal credit card bills amounting to tens of thousands of dollars, even threatening to break up and expose Ethan's financial fraud to the media. With no way out, Ethan, under the banner of an emergency project procurement, forcibly signed a financial appropriation order, transferring the public funds directly into Chloe's private account to pay Chloe's luxury debts and their jointly sustained exorbitant expenses. He believed his methods were unseen. As long as the financial crisis lasted a few days, he could cover everything up. However, he had no idea that all of this was under my tight surveillance and precise design. As the 60% shareholder, I had already arranged for a top international independent audit team to move into Aurora Tech 3 days ago. I not only held the highest access to the company's accounts, but also installed the most advanced compliance monitoring program within the company's financial system. Just 5 minutes after Ethan signed the transfer order, a red popped up on my encrypted computer. Watching the screen show the exact transfer of funds from the company's public funds account into Chloe's private account, I gracefully put down my coffee cup. A cold, wry smile playing at the corner of my mouth. Embezzling public funds, and in such a huge amount. Legally, this is no longer an ordinary commercial dispute or a quarrel of lovers. It is a genuine criminal offense. Ms. Victoria, all evidence chain is fully secured. My chief legal counsel stood in front of the desk, respectfully handing me a thick file, including flow of funds diagrams, electronic signature records, IP address traces, and Chloe's private account deposit receipts, forming a perfect closed loop. Once we submit to judicial authorities, the court will not grant any chance of bail. Excellent. I stood up, straightening my sharp black suit jacket, notify the Serious Fraud Office. I want to go there in person. Half an hour later, 2 police cars with flashing lights and wailing sirens pulled up in front of Aurora Tech's headquarters. At this moment, Ethan sat in the CEO's office, hugging the Chloe who had just received the money, forcing a smile as he boasted about his grand blueprint to rise again. Chloe, holding the limited edition bag she had just purchased with a swiped card, smiled brilliantly, sticking close to Ethan for affection. Bam! The office door was slammed open by several uniformed officers from the Serious Fraud Office. I, cold and poised, walked into the office with the legal team and the police, unhurried. Ethan and Chloe jumped up from the sofa as if their tails were stepped on, like startled cats. Victoria? You. How did you bring the police in? Ethan's face turned stark white, his eyes filled with vigilance and fear. Chloe was even more frightened and hurriedly tucked the limited edition bag at her side, screeching, Victoria, you're going too far. This is a company, why did you bring the police? Do you want to intimidate us? I didn't even look at Chloe, my gaze coldly fixed on Ethan, and I spoke calmly, Mr. Ethan, you don't need to be tense. I'm here today merely to fulfill a duty as a major shareholder, cooperating with the police to investigate a severe embezzlement and abuse of power case. What nonsense are you spouting? Ethan roared, pulling his lungs in a struggle to cover up his extreme fear. I'm the founder of this company. I moved company funds for project operation. Stop making baseless accusations here. Project operation? I raised an eyebrow, signaling the officers beside me to present evidence. The lead officer stepped forward with a cold face, presenting the arrest warrant and seizure documents, his voice stern, Mr. Ethan, according to the audit report submitted by Ms. Victoria and the bank's monitoring data, at 10:30 this morning you secretly transferred $3 million of company funds into Ms. Chloe's personal account and used it to repay Ms. Chloe's personal debts. This behavior is suspected of constituting embezzlement of a huge amount and misappropriation of funds. Meanwhile, Ms. Chloe is suspected of knowingly receiving illicit proceeds and participating in the crime, a joint offense. Please come with us. The sentence rang like thunder in the office. Ethan felt struck, his legs buckled, and he collapsed into his office chair, his pupils nearly bulging from his eye sockets. No. It's impossible. How could you find this so quickly? Victoria, you're calculating me. You're deceiving me. Calculating me? I stepped closer to him, looking down at his face twisted by fear, and sneered, Ethan, when you reach too far, you'll be cut down. I've given you countless chances to be a decent person, but you chose to dig your own grave. Chloe nearby was completely scared stiff. When she heard that she herself was also suspected of criminal offense and would go to prison, she collapsed instantly, letting out a horrific scream. No! Not me. Officer, I'm innocent. Chloe shoved the collapsing Ethan away, pointed at him, and roared, It's him. It's Ethan who forced me to take this money. He did it to please me, stealing company money and transferring it to me. I didn't know this was public funds at all. If you're going to arrest someone, arrest him, not me. Ethan looked at the first love who had once poured her heart out, even willing to commit crimes to save her, with disbelief and heartbreak. Chloe. What are you saying? I embezzled funds to help you pay off debts. How could you treat me like this? Shut up. If you can't handle things yourself, you can't even deal with a woman, and you still want to drag me down? Chloe rained punches and kicks on Ethan like a madwoman, her delicate makeup already shredded by tears and anger. Watching the two people who had been deeply affectionate for each other now tearing at each other like dogs in front of the police in a bid to save themselves, I stood to the side, gently shaking my head, my eyes filled with contempt and disdain. This is what they call true love. In the face of cold law and the imprisonment that awaited, it was as fragile as a piece of thin paper. Take them away. The officer interrupted the farce with disgust, producing cold handcuffs, the click-clack of the metal ensnaring Ethan and Chloe's wrists securely. The cold touch of metal jolted Ethan awake. He was being led out by the police, and as he passed me, he cried out with despair and supplication, "Victoria! I was wrong. Please, for the 5 years of our relationship, spare me. I'm willing to go to prison, I'll give you all my shares, please drop the charges." I slowly turned around, watching his figure pushed into the elevator with a cold, piercing gaze, my voice low and firm. "Ethan, your crimes have only just begun to be settled." Outside the company building, dozens of media reporters had already arrived, their flashbulbs flickering wildly. Once dominant startup entrepreneur Ethan and his first love Chloe, the socialite, were seen in handcuffs, escorted into the police car in a humiliating state, captured from all angles without a blind spot. Because of the police investigation process and paying a large bail, Chloe was temporarily released on bail after being detained for 24 hours. But having lost Ethan, the ATM, and facing enormous legal fees and a possible judgment at any moment, the completely deranged Chloe decided to take a risk. She attempted to use her social circle to save face and to latch onto a new wealthy man. Tonight, the city is hosting the annual top-tier charity auction evening for socialites. Chloe secretly pried open the storage locker Ethan had previously rented, and stole from it a globally limited bespoke gown that I had originally funded and stored abroad, a solitary piece from a top Italian luxury brand, the Eternal Star, set with hundreds of natural faceted diamonds, worth over $1 million. She wore this dress, which originally belonged to me, applied heavy makeup, and strutted into the banquet scene, attempting to reshape in front of the public the illusion that she was unscathed and still a top socialite. However, she had no idea that every diamond on this dress had its serial number registered under my name, Victoria. Midway through the gala, Chloe stood among a group of unsuspecting ladies, proudly boasting about the dress's expense and uniqueness. I, wearing a sharp black suit, accompanied by the brand's Greater China Regional President and 4 uniformed enforcement officers, strode directly into the auction hall. "Everyone stop." My cold voice echoed through the hall via the central microphone. All eyes immediately fixed on me, then on the pale Chloe standing in the crowd center. The brand president stepped forward in cold resolve, producing the anti-counterfeit terminal and ownership certificates, and loudly announced to the entire hall, "Ladies and gentlemen. The dress currently worn by Chloe is a private asset purchased outright by Victoria 3 years ago. This dress has clear ownership registration and an anti-counterfeit serial number. Ms. Chloe, without permission, forced entry and illicitly possessed it, severely infringing on Victoria's property rights and suspected of theft." The hall exploded in an uproar. All the socialites and ladies shrank back as if confronted with a plague, fixing Chloe with disgusted, thief-like glances. "No! This isn't theft. This is a gift from Ethan." Chloe trembled all over, screaming in hysteria as she attempted to defend herself. "Ethan?" I walked up to her with a cold smile, looking down from above at her. "Ethan used my money too. Chloe, you're not only a thief, you're a parasite wearing the glow of a thief." The enforcing officers stepped forward, producing the on-site seizure documents, and said coldly, "Ms. Chloe, this dress is part of the case and the theft evidence. It must be sealed and seized on site immediately. Please cooperate and remove it now, or accompany us to the restroom to complete the forced seizure." Under the flashes of countless cameras and the scrutiny of the top socialites, Chloe's social death was complete. She was dragged by security to the backstage restroom, forced to remove the splendid dress that did not belong to her under the supervision of law enforcement, and finally, wrapped in a tattered towel, was escorted away by the police into the heavy rain. After being taken away by the police a second time, Chloe finally felt the fear seeping into her marrow. To escape the looming disaster of the prison, she wagered her last bet on Ethan. She cried as she informed the currently released on bail Ethan, who was borrowing money from everywhere, that she possessed a hidden overseas asset left by the family. As long as Ethan could somehow gather the liquid funds under their names to use as a bail and exit guarantee, she would be willing to take Ethan with her to flee overseas and start over from scratch. At this moment, Ethan was already pushed to the brink by his creditors and my legal team. He believed Chloe's lie without hesitation. To raise the final so-called getaway money, Ethan even risked everything. He secretly sold his last remaining small apartment, borrowed against it at usurious interest, and moved all his savings into Chloe's so-called guaranteed joint account. Yet this was only Chloe's plan to completely abandon him. Upon receiving the money, Chloe secretly contacted an underground intermediary, bought a fake passport, booked a red-eye flight to South America, and planned to steal Ethan's last lifeline and flee alone. All of this was under my control. In the late-night airport customs, Chloe, wearing sunglasses and a mask and dragging her suitcase, was about to check in. Ms. Chloe, your passport is suspected of forgery, and you are prohibited from leaving the country during bail conditions. Please cooperate with our investigation. The cold voice of the customs officer shattered her dream. Several Chase police officers intercepted her on the spot. Not only that, the high-interest lenders who were chasing her for debt and Ethan, with bloodshot eyes, also crowded into the airport lobby upon hearing the news. When Ethan saw Chloe holding a fake passport and lugging the suitcase filled with all the money from selling the house, his brain exploded with a loud bang. Chloe! You lied to me? Ethan's eyes instantly reddened, like a furious beast. You told me this was overseas assets? You actually planned to run away alone with the last loan money I borrowed? Seeing the truth exposed, Chloe finally dropped the mask of gentleness and hissed, Ethan. What do you think you are? If I thought you had money, why would I pretend for so many years with you? You are now a poor wreck who can't even afford a house, a beggar of a family's ruin. Should I stay and wait to die with you? Bitch. I ruined my life for you. I've shouldered criminal charges for you. Ethan went berserk, lunging at Chloe and grabbing her by the throat. In front of hundreds of travelers and countless phone cameras, the two of them wrestled on the concrete like two mad wild dogs. Chloe's wig was torn off, the corner of her mouth torn, and Ethan's face slashed and smeared with blood. They exposed each other's financial fraud and schemes, ripping apart their dirtiest, most disgusting cards in front of the entire internet. This once deeply passionate love they bragged about as transcending life and death collapsed into a bloody joke that shocked the entire city at the moment of its ruin. Finally, the arriving police subdued the two bloodied, blood-splattered lovers and escorted them to a patrol car. After the airport fiasco, Ethan and Chloe completely lost the last trace of morality and the space to breathe. But for Ethan, true destruction lies not only in the collapse of a public persona but in the uprooting of his material foundation. The Court Enforcement Bureau moved with astonishing efficiency. Based on the pre-litigation preservation of assets I filed in advance, a debt collection order amounting to tens of millions of dollars, and a favorable ownership ruling for the shares, the enforcement team swiftly began a lawful liquidation and auction of all remaining assets under Ethan's name. On this day, the court's online asset auction opened on schedule. The auction items included the last few discounted used cars under Ethan, the remaining hardware equipment of Aurora Tech, and the old industrial park land and core property that he had deceitfully obtained from my father and kept in private name as a shell. Without a working cash flow, Ethan was utterly unable to repay the tens of millions in debt. He could only watch as the prizes he had fought hard to seize were pushed onto the judicial auction block. I sat in the office of the group's headquarters, sipping black coffee, tapping the auction screen with my fingertips. In the entire bidding process, no institution dared compete with me. The investors who had been duped by Ethan had long since marked him as a plague god and kept their distance. Auction finished. Congratulations, Ms. Victoria, on acquiring the 09 industrial park property and related assets at the reserve price. With the chattering of the auction hammer, I, at an incredibly low price, effortlessly reclaimed all the family assets that Ethan had devoured, restoring them to Victoria's name. The meager auction proceeds, after deducting high litigation fees, enormous debt principal and interest, and usury, were not even enough to cover the interest. On the afternoon of the auction's end, the bailiff's enforcement team directly seized Ethan's temporary residence, leaving his last few tattered clothes on the street. The court formally released the list of dishonest persons under execution, and Ethan's name was prominently listed first, legally barred from high spending, restricted from leaving the country, and his bank cards and electronic payment accounts frozen. Once a young CEO who moved in luxury cars and tailored suits, Ethan had now completely fallen into a state of massive bankruptcy with no credibility, unable even to ride the subway. A heavy rain poured down again. Ethan, soaked through, dragged a worn suitcase along the cold curb. He patted every pocket, unable to scrape together change to buy a loaf of bread. He pulled out his shut-off phone, trying to call those former brothers and business partners, but the only responses were the number you have dialed is not in service or a merciless disconnect. Cornered, he crouched by the roadside, watching the passing cars splash water onto him, his eyes filled with boundless despair and remorse. Ethan, reduced to a debtor in breach of trust, wandering the streets, did not surrender completely to his fate. Driven by extreme despair and a twisted thirst for revenge, he contacted an overseas black and grey market intermediary he had once met in the startup circle. The other party claimed that at the forthcoming Southeast Asian Offshore Financial Summit, he could connect him with a piece of anonymous offshore risk capital. All Ethan had to do was to sell the algorithm data that Aurora Tech had once stolen, and he would receive several $1 million in cash to turn the tables. This was Ethan's final gamble. With the fake identification provided by the intermediary, he boarded a private yacht headed for the summit. In his view, as long as he escaped abroad, he could rely on this black market funds to have a chance at a comeback. However, he had no idea at all that this so-called overseas black market buyer was nothing more than a trap I had long since laid. That night at the summit, the banquet hall of the high-end conference center was brightly lit. Ethan, wearing an ill-fitting cheap suit, stood at the podium and fervently pitched to the overseas investors in the audience about his so-called exclusive technology, even openly displaying contracts involving cross-border money laundering and illegal data trading. He spoke with increasing fervor, as if he could already see himself regaining a fortune and ruthlessly trampling me underfoot. By injecting funds, this project can immediately evade international oversight and achieve trace-free fund laundering, Ethan proclaimed, waving his hands and delivering his pitch with dramatic emotion. However, before he could finish, the conference hall doors were forcefully kicked open. Dozens of officials from international financial regulators, cross-border crime investigators, and local police roared in, instantly surrounding the entire venue. "Mr. Ethan, you are suspected of cross-border data theft, illegal money laundering, and major financial fraud," announced the lead officer, reading the arrest warrant. Ethan's knees buckled in fright, the speech manuscript scattering to the floor. He stared fearfully at the audience and saw me, dressed in a cold, immaculate white suit, walking into the hall accompanied by dozens of senior international financial regulators. The so-called overseas buyer walked up behind me with a smile and respectfully called out, "Ms. Victoria." Ethan completely collapsed, his eyes bulging, roaring like a maniac, "Victoria. It's you again. You used black market schemes to deceive me?" "Deceive?" I stepped to the front of the podium, sneering down at him, "Ethan, greed and evil thoughts were your choices. Your cross-border crimes are enough to keep you in prison for life." Cold handcuffs snapped shut once more on Ethan's wrists. On the day of Ethan was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with all illegal gains repaid and a sky-high fine imposed. Chloe, for joint offense and theft, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. On the eve of Ethan being transferred to a high-security prison, I submitted a request for a solo visit. Behind the thick bulletproof glass, I sat in the visiting room. The door opened, Ethan wore a worn gray prison uniform, his hands and feet heavy with shackles, and he dragged himself in with great difficulty. In just a few months, the handsome face I once knew had become gaunt and hollow, his eyes bloodshot, his hair white, and he exuded a deathly aura as if he were on the verge of collapse. When he saw me across the glass, still bright and dazzling, exuding the strong aura of someone in power, his lips twitched violently. He picked up the phone, his voice scratched and hoarse, like a rag tearing in the wind. "Victoria. Are you satisfied? You've sent me to hell and trampled all my dignity underfoot. You come to see me now, do you want to see my joke?" I calmly picked up the phone, held it to my ear, my tone as steady as if we were discussing today's weather. "Ethan, do you think this is a joke?" I leaned forward slightly, locking my eyes on him with a heavy, cold voice. In the past life, in that cold, dark basement, you and Chloe broke my bones, ate away all the inheritance of my family, and finally pushed me into the abyss yourself. Did you ever think you would have today? Past life? These two words stabbed into Ethan's mind like a sharp poison needle. He jolted, pupils constricting sharply, a look of extreme fear and incredulity bursting from the depths of his pupils. You. What are you talking about? What past life? Who exactly are you? I curled my lips into a cruel yet elegant arc and said softly, you think my foresight is a coincidence? You think I can precisely calculate every step of your greed and petty schemes by luck? Ethan, God gave me a second chance. From the moment I woke up, every step you took, every trap you walked into, was a coffin tailor-made for you. From taking all my assets, selling the house, freezing accounts, to you misappropriating public funds, being betrayed by Chloe, auctioning assets, and the blacknet in Southeast Asia. Every step has been within my calculation. No. It's impossible. This can't be. Ethan utterly went insane, violently bashing the bulletproof glass with the phone, tears and snot streaming down his face, emitting desperate shrieks. You're a devil. Victoria, you're a devil. A devil? I stood up coldly, looking down at the man whose spirit had completely collapsed. No, I'm just a creditor demanding payment for a blood debt. In the long 20-year sentence, through endless hard labor and enormous debt, remember everything you did in the past life and this life. I hung up the phone without a backward glance, turned toward the door of the visiting room. Behind me, Ethan's despairing cries and shrieks reached their peak as he struggled violently on the cold hard floor, stamping his feet, until his nails bled and split, finally being roughly pinned to the ground by guards. When I stepped out through the gates of the prison, the heavy gloom that had hung over the city for an entire week finally dispersed. The golden sunlight broke through the clouds and spilled onto my cold shoulders, washing away the chill and grievances that had accumulated in my bones over the past few months. I stood on the tall steps, looked back at the high wall, the electric fence, and the iron gate. Inside were Ethan, who was about to face 20 years of iron bars and a complete collapse of his mind, and Chloe, who would spend 8 years in prison with her youth squandered, becoming a laughingstock. Outside was the boundless blue sky and the bright future belonging to me, Victoria. All the blood-soaked feuds of the past, at this moment, became nothing more than passing clouds. A year later. New York, United States, NASDAQ Market Site Hall. The ceremony for this year's most anticipated tech company IPO is taking place here. The entire hall is lavishly decorated. A red carpet stretches from the door to the trading podium. Dozens of world-class financial media spotlights and cameras illuminate the scene as if day and night have inverted. I wear an exquisitely tailored white haute couture suit, 10-centimeter stiletto heels clacking on the floor, and the emerald necklace my mother left me around my neck as I stride to the trading platform. Behind me are the global executives and top legal advisors who have accompanied me through blood-soaked battles and achieved great feats. Let us count down from 3 and welcome the founder and CEO of Genesis Tech, Ms. Victoria, to strike the opening gong. The host's voice resounds across the hall, strong and piercing. 3, 2, 1. I smile and raise the golden mallet, summoning all my strength to strike the massive bronze gong with a heavy blow. Clang! The gong rings clearly and powerfully through the entire trading floor. In the next second, the stock code on the main screen, GTC, flashes a dazzling green as the price curve rockets vertically at a suffocating slope. Opening up 180%. Market cap officially surpasses $10 billion. Sets the highest IPO debut market cap in nearly a decade for the tech sector. The room erupts in delirious thunderous cheers and applause. Ribbons and gold confetti rain from above, like bright droplets, landing on my shoulders. The front pages of major international financial newspapers simultaneously publish urgent headlines, from family crisis to 1,000 billion empire, the tech queen Victoria takes the helm. The core tech patents once coveted by Ethan through illicit means are now in my hands, fully commercialized and becoming the absolute benchmark guiding global AI and financial security. I have not only reclaimed everything that belonged to me, but also stood atop the pinnacle that Ethan could never reach in a lifetime. And at this moment, half a world away, in a high-security maximum facility, a prison transport workshop is hot, damp, and dark, filled with the odor of mildew and sweat. Ethan, wearing a rough, tattered gray prison uniform, with heavy iron shackles on his wrists and ankles, toils wearily and clumsily, moving heaps of cement bricks weighing hundreds of pounds. In just a year, the once dashing startup prodigy who wore luxury cars and haute couture has become pale-eyed, with withered cheeks, white temples, and a hunched back bent under the weight of labor. His hands are raw from cement, bleeding whenever he exerts force, but if he slows even a fraction, the guards nearby will swing their batons with icy reprimand. In the adjacent female incarceration unit, Chloe, who had lost her haute couture gowns, top-tier cosmetics, and her circle of vanity, sat in ragged prison clothes at a cold sewing machine, mechanically pressing the treadle. Her previously delicate, well-cared-for legs were severely swollen from long-term malnutrition and heavy labor, and her once vibrant face had grown pallid and emaciated, like an old woman. At that moment, a loud voice of the news announcer boomed from the shabby color TV mounted high in the prison workshop. Now we bring you an international financial news report. Genesis Tech, founded by our country's renowned entrepreneur Victoria, has today listing on Nasdaq, with an opening market value surpassing $100 billion. Victoria's personal net worth has once again broken the global female billionaire record, becoming the true head of a technological empire. On the screen, I stood in white clothes, resplendent, at the gun-pounding platform, a scene clearly projected on the dim workshop wall. Ethan's body stiffened. A heavy brick fell from his arms to the ground, striking his swollen toes. But he seemed not to feel pain, only looked up blankly, staring fixedly at the faint TV screen on the wall. The woman on the screen was dazzling, as if an inviolable goddess above the clouds, and he himself could only wear prison clothes, in the cold, dirty mud, facing a long, indefinite 20 years of imprisonment, as well as a lifetime of insurmountable fines and compensation. Victoria! Victoria! Ethan's throat produced a hoarse wheeze like a broken kite. The woman he had pushed into the abyss in the previous life had become in this one the death that would utterly trample him into the mire. A vast sense of despair and remorse swallowed his heart like thousands of venomous snakes, yet he had no right to cry or tear his heart apart. Number 097. What are you dawdling for? Move that brick away immediately. If you can't meet today's quota, we'll deduct tonight's rations. The prison guard's harsh shout burst forth. Ethan convulsed violently, and under the gaze of countless fellow inmates, like a stray dog whose spine had been broken, he trembled and knelt on the ground, his nails digging into the cement joints as he arduously pulled the heavy brick back into his arms. In the evening, the sunset dyed the entire coastal highway with an intoxicating blend of blood-tinged gold and deep purple. A pristine white limited edition Pagani supercar stood quietly beside the cliff along the coastline. The wind howled past, ruffling my long hair, and the air was filled with the salty sweet scent of the sea and the sense of absolute freedom. In the distance, the surging waves rolled golden whitecaps under the afterglow, boundless and magnificent. I stood beside the car, removed my sunglasses, and drew a deep breath of this cool, pure air. No more tearing betrayal, no more hypocritical entanglements. All calculations, hatred, and blood and tears had, at this moment, finally found a perfect ending. I opened the car door, sat back into the snug racing seat, put on my sunglasses, and my long, elegant legs gently pressed the accelerator. Boom! The piercing and powerful V12 engine roared with a thrilling, surging sound, like a beast proclaiming its dominion over this world. I drove the pristine white car, tearing through the coastline's afterglow, the vast evening glow and the vast sea breeze, with no regrets, heading toward my own infinite, vast future worth billions.